Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghost and Spirits Special Edition video. Alright, so here is another mini tour that I just did this past weekend here in Texas. If those of you that are newbies, basically what I do is I visit some locations in and around my city of Austin, and if they're day trips, I can go ahead and knock those out in one day. But in this case, if it's a little bit longer trip and there's several areas I want to visit, then I generally stay overnight, and then that way I try to take care of most things, most locations as possible. This was no exception. I went to a place called Goliad, Texas, which is located probably around halfway between San Antonio and Houston, specifically to see two locations that are there, two areas that are reportedly pretty haunted, one very much so compared to the other one. And so I'm going to split this into two parts based on both locations. There was even a third mini location that I visited related to the second place, which I'll talk about in my next video. So be on the lookout for that soon. So yes, I went to visit there, Goliad, Texas, and I stayed overnight. The first place I went to was this, which is called the Mission Espiritu Santo, there again in Goliad, Texas. If you have never been there to that city, it's a tiny town. It's one of those towns where you wonder how it still exists. Kind of like out in the middle, not really in the middle of nowhere, but if it wasn't for the automobile, it would be pretty hard for this town to continue to grow, I guess, because you definitely have to go out of your way to visit this location. It's not near any near major city what itself in of itself. It's basically in the middle, again in between, like, let's say San Antonio and Houston. It's a beautiful town though. It's very tiny. It reminded me, I guess, of the Austin area back before everybody started moving here, and it has a whole bunch of historic sites. I mean, I was passing cemeteries that look like they've been propped up since the 1800s. I mean, these are tiny cemeteries that probably are family local plots. I really wanted desperately to stop by and see one, but I heard that because these are family plots, it's considered trespassing of sorts, even though they are out in the open. But if you ever have a chance, go visit Goliad, Texas. It's a good place to visit. They have still some good amenities there. So even though it's a tiny town, you're not gonna have no way to get food or gas. No, there's a lot of places there that if you truly need the basic necessities when you're traveling, you'll see it there. So in any case, this was the first place, the Mission Espiritu Santo, which you're looking at a picture of here, and the other place, the Presidio, is located nearby, and so I went to visit that the next day. So let's talk about first about the Mission Espiritu Santo. So what is this mission? Well, it's considered the most successful mission within the state of Texas in its history. I guess it has to do with when it was founded a long time ago. We're talking near 300 years or so. So amazing to think that 300 years of this thing being around, and it's still there to this very day. You can go visit it. It's obviously it's a historical landmark now, so it's going to be protected pretty much as long as Texas is around, and it has every single day hours that you can visit. So if you go there, you'll definitely have a good amount of hours to do so. Also, you can actually park there if you have an RV, for example, or if you just wanted to use their campgrounds, you can do so. I didn't take a look into how much the rent is, but if you wanted to, you could stay overnight there in that location. I guess if you're truly traveling within the state of Texas and you wanted to be on your way and take a stop somewhere, this is a great route. So the mission itself is kind of big. I mean, it's obviously it's like a large church, but then within that church there are several mini buildings. One of those has been converted to a modern day museum dedicated to the mission. The rest, I believe, are pretty much stand still, like they look as they did back then. Now, clearly there has been some restoration within the mission itself. And the way that the very nice lady that helped me out at the counter was mentioning that yes, a lot of the stuff has been restored, but at the same time it's trying to be kept as is from before. And then there's some areas which you'll see pictures of here where the walls are the original ones. They're just been deteriorated, like they're completely almost gone, but they're there to this very day. So again, it's great to visit this location, see living history on it in of its finest, and it's used today as an actual church for ceremonies too. Whenever you go inside, and you'll see some of the pictures throughout there as well. You can go, you can, I guess, pray if you wanted to. You could also hold ceremonies there. It's definitely used for that purpose. Not to mention, of course, as I was mentioning earlier, the thing about the RV, how it's a campground. It's a gigantic campground. We're talking dozens of acres. I had a map provided to me if I wanted to see the entire area, because the mission itself is like a tiny portion of the entire location. It's a gigantic, very gigantic park. But I did not go through it anywhere else other than the mission and then their nearby trail. But otherwise, it was a great, great place to see. Now, as far as the hauntings and what are associated with this mission, I'll first talk about the reported hauntings, like people, what they've said they've encountered there. And then I'll explain my own encounter. I'll mention up front, though, not really much when it comes to myself experiencing something. I'm on a losing streak when it comes to these things. Pretty much like 0 for 6, 0 for 7 now. Nothing in terms of that smoking gun, like that apparition or that noise or whatever right in front of me. No, in this case, it's the closest that I have is I heard something, and I'll explain that here in a minute. But throughout all these pictures, there's not going to be anything. Like, there's nothing in terms of me pointing out, look at this face staring back at me, or look at this misty figure right over there on the corner. No, nothing along those lines. But here are the items that people state whenever they go there. And it's fascinating, too, because, again, this is one of the oldest missions, considered one of the most successful missions, still in some ways in operations today, more along the lines of a touristy place. But these are the things that people say that they see, and considering that all these RVs that are parked there as well, I wonder if these people, especially when they stay overnight, if they see these things. So, because it used to be a very old mission, no doubt on Indian ground as well, people report seeing an apparition of an Indian there on horseback. Now, as far as like what this Indian does and how he travels around, who knows, but they reportedly see this guy on that horseback riding around, and then that's it. Also, because of it being tied to a mission, and in some cases like a fort-like status, because some of the walls surrounding the mission, they look like they used to be part of a fort, but no longer there, like the fort deteriorated at some point. People report hearing the sounds of drums. I don't know if they were necessarily like military drums or more on the lines of musical drums, but people report hearing that, and it's very easy to do so if you're there, because as I experienced when I was there, it was very quiet. It was very silent. There's this place, Goliad, is out there in the middle of nowhere. Like there's, you're not going to distinguish highway sounds in there. You're not going to have city sounds around there, because there practically is no city there. So for you to be able to hear something, it's very easy to do so. And so that's what people report, that they hear these drums beating throughout the mission itself. I didn't hear anything like that, but that's the report that people have. Also, people report smelling something, in this case the smell of pipe smoke. I don't know exactly if that pipe smoke is from a long lost missionary there, or somebody that I guess used to be a Native American, but that's another thing that people report, that they're walking around the mission and then all of a sudden they have a very strong smell, very distinct smell of pipe smoke. I went in there to the mission trying to see these things specifically. Like as you see in my pictures, I just take a bunch of pictures left and right, especially on the outside, to see if I could capture this phantom Indian there on horseback. But no, nothing along those lines. Then I kept my ears open to try to see if try to hear something along the lines of any kind of beating drums. No. And then also, I was fortunate enough too, because another reason why I love going to these places, they're so isolated that I get to walk around by myself practically for the entire tour. I tried to stay in several spots to try to smell that very distinctive pipe smoke, but no, nothing as well either there. So that's it. Finally though, I did go to this place. So outside the mission there in Goliad, Texas, if you go there and if you go towards a corner, and this was a surprise to me, I had no idea that this was there, but following the maps I saw it and I decided to take it. There's a trail. I forgot what the trail is called, but this trail that's there, it goes off into the woods. And the reason that I specifically took that trail is because it has to do with another known haunting there in Goliad, Texas, there in the mission. Oh, by the way, that's what it's called. It's called Anorama Trail. And within that trail, people report, I mean, actually not within that trail, but within that foresty area, which you're going to see, if you haven't seen already, a bunch of pictures of, that there's another phantom of sorts there in the mission. And instead of it being a person, though, it's an animal. Like, people report actually seeing a phantom wolf of some sort. Now, what this wolf represents, who knows? Maybe it's supposed to be the wolf of a person that used to live there and then turn into a wolf thereafter in the afterlife, or it could just be the ghost of a wolf, somebody that a thing like an animal that used to live there. Who knows? But the idea is, people report seeing this phantom wolf around that area, and if they follow it, or if they're curious enough and try to see, where this thing is heading to, then it purportedly runs right into that wood foresty area and then just basically disappears. Like, that's it. Like, that's their telltale sign of it being a phantom wolf. Well, I decided to take this trail, which goes around in a circle of sorts. It was a very interesting trail because I wanted to kind of take that little risk. This is not a very, I guess, user-friendly trail is probably the best word I can think of, because when it's there, it's something where you have to take it, but it starts getting very narrow and then very thick, like into the brush, into the woods, into the forest. And if you're not careful enough, you could get lost. Now, as long as you follow that trail that's there, like on the bottom, and you see the distinct pathway, then you'll be fine. But if you decide to branch out into the woods, and there are plenty of open areas, not necessarily too open, like they're pointing and telling you, hey, head off in this direction. No, but if you decided to sidetrack yourself, unless you have a compass, then you could truly get lost. Not that I was going to do that anyways, because one of the things within this trail that I found horrifying is the entire ground. I could never find a single spot that was not filled with ants. And I'm not talking like tiny ants. I'm talking like mother of all ants. Like, these ants were humongous. I had no idea that in this mission I would encounter these things, so I always had to keep moving. I could never stand still. As long as I moved, then these ants would not be able to crawl at me. I mean, this is like Indiana Jones type ants. It was amazing to see these ants there, and then wonder to myself, how on earth do people stay in those RVs? Because if these ants are out here in this wooded area, I can only imagine. And there's no food. I can only imagine when there's those RVs and all that food around, where these ants are going to try to go as a favorite place. Anyways, I followed this trail, and it's about almost a mile long, and about halfway through it, you pass by 2 bridges. And again, stay on the trail, you'll be fine. Follow the bridge, you'll be fine. And then it started to get to a point after the second bridge where it went up a hill, and that trail started to get slimmer and slimmer. So that very distinct pathway on the ground started to go smaller and smaller until it practically disappeared into the brush. It was at that point that I said, no, I'm not going any further than that, because not only am I going to get into a crazy area where I might get lost, but at the same time, there's all these animals that are there. I saw giant spiders, like I guess probably about the halfway the size of my hand, that were hanging around several locations there within the foliage. Of course, those aforementioned ants. I did see some lizards as well too. So I'm not going to go into the area and accidentally run into a snake or any other kind of animal. But it was at that very distinct point where I believe I encountered this phantom wolf. This is a stretch, but this is what I heard. Because once I reached that point where I decided, you know what, that pathway is getting smaller and smaller, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn back and just pretty much go exactly the way I came back so I don't lose myself. That's when I heard like a panting of some sort. And it was a very distinct panting. It was the panting of, let's say, like a dog would have if it's out there in the heat. You know how dogs breathe in, breathe out really, really quick through their mouth? That's what I heard. But it couldn't have been a dog because there's no dog-like area around where I was. The RVs were on the 180 degrees on the other side of my location, so it couldn't have been a dog wandering out there. And I was by myself throughout this entire pathway. Me walking half a mile in this heat, in this foliage, I was totally by myself, just listening to the beauty of nature, like just listening to the distinct silence of it. And that was it. Like, but I heard this panting and I thought to myself, could it be that wolf, that very distinctive phantom wolf that people reportedly seen in that mission? Again, I could not rule out that it was a dog, but there were so many things pointing towards that phantom wolf. I only thought about that though for a few seconds before again I said, no, I'm out of here. And that's when I turned back around and I went back exactly the way I came back. But that was it. That's the closest that I had. I did not turn back. I did not look back. I didn't want to necessarily look back because with that mindset that this could be the phantom wolf that people have described, I'm not exactly going to be in that area much longer, nor do I want to like see something that I don't want to necessarily see later on. So I just pretty much turned back the way I came back, and that was it. Once I went back to the mission, it was wrapping up things because I had already seen everything else. But that was the closest paranormal experience that I had there. Not the smoking gun again, but it's the closest that I could think with regards to what people stated they experienced there too. So, anyways, that's it for my trip there to the Mission Espiritu Santo. Be on the lookout for my other videos soon that I'll have, which is with regards to the Presidio, also there, that's called the Presidio La Bahia, there in Goliad, Texas, and I will post that very soon for you folks. Alright everybody, thanks again as always, take care.